Welcome to B2B Tech Mindset, where we explore how technology drives business success. Join us as we discuss the latest software solutions, trends, and strategies that can help you stay ahead of the curve. Develop a tech mindset and learn how to leverage technology for growth in your organization.
Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of the Tech Mindset podcast. And today we are going to discuss UI, UX, or UX for SaaS companies or SaaS products. So we have a list of topics that we want to talk about today. And one thing that always puzzles me when you're looking at SaaS software is how complex this stuff is. It's super complicated to work around this stuff. I mean, there's a few of them that you can navigate and they give you some hints about how to get started in the user experience, but most of the time it's a little bit painful. So what do you have, because you are an specialist in this area, and what is about all this complexity thing? Why people make SaaS software so complex?
Yeah. Well, definitely we are going to talk about UX and the problems that make or break your SaaS products. And one of them is, of course, complexity. If your software as a service product is very complex, well, let's start from the beginning. Like, they are complex because the business processes that they try to manage are complex as well. So basically, what your software is doing is trying to manage your business processes or the business processes that are standard for your industry. Like, for instance, in e-commerce, you have like all the merchandising that's happening in the back store. All the e-commerce products have some kind of inventory merchandising, taxonomy that is standard with in the industry, like categories, tags, collections, bundles, etc., etc. And that's why some of the software as a service product are very, very complex. The art, and I will call it the art of doing good UX, is making from something complex something very simple that everybody can use without too much explanation. Apropos complex software, there are softwares out there that the companies have to change the way they work to fit into the software. So it's easier to change the company than to configure the software to actually work with the processes that you have in your company.
But that doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. Like, if some company has accumulated experience that, this way of doing things is the better way or more efficient way to do it, and then, you adopt that software as part of your best practices, that's perhaps a good idea, isn't it?
It sounds good in theory, but as you know, all the changes that you make in the workforce, because in the end you're changing process, you're changing the way that the workforce is working, that comes with a lot of issues. So people are not that productive at the beginning. They have to get used to the new software, etc., etc. So it introduced a series of problems. But let's go back to complexity. So how do you solve complexity in your product? So basically, one rule that I follow every day in my job is like, present the user with the information they need at that moment. So don't overwhelm the user with too much. Like, people, most developers try to simplify things. Oh, we put it in a table with a lot of data, and then the user decide what to look at and what not. That's not the way to do it. And that is usually when these small companies that do software as a service, most of them, I will say like 70% of them, doesn't have a designer in-house. There is like a bunch of developers and business people, and they are doing the UX. The easy way out is like you throw a table to the user and the user figure it out. When you make the table customizable, and then you think that the user have options to make the interface what they want. That's true, but it's actually better if you know what the user have to do or the task they have to complete, what information they need in which step.
But
Like for instance, if you are making an order, let's say you work in a factory and you're making an order for your new product, you need like the source material, right? So for that, you need like, off the top of my head, you need like two things. You need like from your engineers the list of products that you of sources material that you need. So you need a list for your engineer on your screen. When on the other side of the screen, you need your partners that actually sell you those kinds on their offers at pets if they have that. So that means that when you are going to do the order, you have all the information that you need in one screen. You don't have to go open the Word document where the engineer have the list and then go into Alibaba or whatever else to see the list of vendors that you want to buy from. So at this point is basically show only the information that they need at that given time. On the other thing that you can do to reduce complexity in the user interface is like present the user with one task at a time and keep the user always in the same mindset, let's call it like that. Like let's put an example. If you are buying something, you put something in the shopping cart and then you have to follow the step to close the order, right? So usually that is pretty streamlined nowadays. So usually you get like a kind of a wizard where you put first your address, because when you're typing your address, you're not thinking about the credit card. So you're thinking where you live, the address, the right number, the right postal code, etc. Then you say, okay, this is right. And then you move to the payment. And then you make decisions. Okay, I want to pay with PayPal. I want to pay with credit card. Or I want to pay later. Or I want to pay at the door or whatever. So those separating things for a state of mind, like you are in the address state of mind, then you are in payment. After that, usually you get like a review of what you are buying, like all the items that you are buying with all the data on that you just entered. And you can go back as well. So basically, keeping the user in the right mindset at all the time. And for that, then you need to have somebody in your company that it's able to do personas. I'm pretty sure that you have.
But let me ask you a question, because let me challenge that a little bit. How do you know that that's really how the end user feels? So are you gathering information and are you validating those hypotheses, or this is just you trust in the expertise or in the knowledge of the expert to make the decision? But how do you actually know, especially in a business application that has different usage pattern as a consumer application? How do you know that these things actually are true? That complexity is really there.
Yes, there is a way to test that. So first, as a designer, you come with an assumption that this is how it should work, based on your experience, on design principles, on standards that other companies use and other products use. And then you have to, in the best case scenario, you have to test your solution with real users. So you build you can build a prototype, a click prototype. You present the prototype to the user and you say, okay, this is the task that you need to complete. Try to complete it using this interface without explaining anything else. And they are just there with the interface. They know the task in their head, and they try to complete it from what is on the screen. So they are presented with one screen. Maybe it's a big call to action, like create something or order something. When they click on that, and from there they actually test your prototype. Usually they are asked, so the testers are asked to think out loud. So speak what they are thinking. So usually they say, oh, I think it's this way because it is called this way, and they are going to click there. Oh, I get this dialogue. I don't know what that means or whatever. So basically you get a lot of feedback even
but
from a few people. Yeah.
but don't you think, again, I'm challenging here for, for people,
Sure.
who's listening, and they want to, to see the thought process behind it. I guess when people feel observed, they behave in a different way as then when when you are gathering data from their behavior without they knowing that they are being observed. How does this match in the design? Like, because obviously if you have a pilot and you have people there and you bring them for an interview and just sit them in a room in a computer, and then you have someone taking notes or a video camera looking at them, or you're telling me, you know what, we're going to record, the behavior is going to look different. I assume, I don't really know, but is this something that it's integrated in the process? Is it something you account for?
That is actually the first part of the test. It's like you have to talk with the user and explain what the test is about. You have to explain it's a click prototype. You're not to break anything. This is not a test for you. We're testing the solution. So you're not doing nothing wrong. And the more you talk, the more info we get at the end. And usually after you talk like for 5 minutes or 10 minutes about those questions that the tester may have, they are pretty relaxed in the end. So from my experience, when they say, okay, I cannot break anything, they are not testing me, I cannot do anything wrong, then at that point they relax. Of course, they behave a little bit different as when they are in the real world, because in the test, they don't have the telephone, for instance. We make sure that they put the telephone in silence, or they don't have co-workers coming in and coming out, or they are late for lunch or whatever. They have to pick up the kids or whatever. Usually, it's a quiet time, like half an hour, 40 minutes that we have for the test. Of course, it's different. But even if it's a different behavior, for us designers, is a lot of insight right there from those tests. It's a way to validate. If you come up of the test on like one metric that we use is like how many people completed the task, like for A to B. Like you have to do this task, go from A to B and complete this, achieve this. How many people in the test were able to complete it? That is a big one of the important metrics. Unusually, if you go out of the test and like 100% completed the test, then you have usually a good solution that fits like 80% of the user. You don't have to have the best solution because that's impossible. You want to have a solution that fits 80% of the use cases.
Okay. Do you use some things like heat maps to understand if people is like lost, or you just look at what they are saying, or is a combination of both? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, in the case of active testing, the one that we just talked, right? There is no need for a heat map or eye tracking or whatever. In the case when you are doing like passive testing or you are not involved, like you send the prototype and they test on their own and you just record all what they do on the screen. For that, you can do like heat maps but basically heat map for software, heat maps are very good for discovery. For instance, if you have a marketing page, so where people focus their attention, to test that, to improve that. If you want to focus the attention on the product, then you do a heat map. Is the product it's not getting too much attention, that you have to change the design and test again. But usually for software as a service is basically you have to complete a task, and that is what you are testing. For marketing purposes, marketing websites, brochure type websites, you can test it in a different way. So you can ask not a complete test. So how does this design of this website make you feel? Because you have to wake a sentiment, of a feeling in the user to make them do an action. That is the case of marketing. So it's totally different from software as a service.
Okay, so now we look at about complexity, and complexity is always a huge problem. So how do you mitigate complexity? Because I've seen some applications that when you are first confronted with the experience with the interface, they kind of guide you, or they have tooltips, or they guide you somehow through the experience. So they take you through the hand, and then they walk you through. So what are ways that you use to onboard people? If that's the right word that you use for that.
Yes, that's the right word. So onboarding. That is actually a big problem in complex software. Like, for instance, you get like your tenant in your software as a service that you just bought, and it's empty. When you usually are presented with an empty dashboard with all the metrics are in zero, right? So where do you go from there? Like all the software as a service have concepts, have entities like customers in the case of a CRM, on calls or whatever. So how do you go from there? So usually what you do, what I have done in the past, is like you create a small onboarding that at the end of that, the user is able to start using the application. For instance, off the top of my head, it will be a CRM. You get your new tenant. That will be part of the onboarding. Is like, oh, create your first contact. And after you have the first contact, create your first lead, and then schedule your first call. And after you complete like 3 or 4 of these steps, then you are using the system. And you know how to create a contact, how to create a lead, how to schedule a call, etc., etc. So the system guide the user, because the system already know the data you have, the data is missing. So it's pretty easy to build an onboarding system that way. There is another solutions. They are actually products out there that you can integrate with your own product. When you define the path, and basically what they do is like they play that path in your product. In the case that is a
Like a
web
wizard.
page, right?
It's like a wizard. It's like a
It's
wizard you had
like,
in the early 2000s, in the 90s.
yeah, something like that. But you can have like someone talking to you and telling what to do. You can also record video and show where now you go here, and actually point where they have to click, etc. So there are actually software to do that. It's even better if it's integrated in your own software, because the software know the data they need to work. So it's better that way, but it's also expensive because it's not like core capability of the product, like the onboarding. On some other products, they don't care, because they're going to be installed and configured by an implementation partner. So they don't care of the onboarding. The implementation partner has to read the documentation, and then they do their thing. So the end
But
user get the system running in the end.
but I recall when I was in the gaming industry that was a fundamental part of every single game, that the tutorial that you build. So usually, in gaming, the user interface is free for all. So it's like
Yes, you can do whatever you want.
convention. There's no convention. There's nothing. You have a full creative power and freedom to do almost whatever you want.
Yeah.
And yet there is always this tutorial that guides you through the user interface. And I recall at the time that actually the tutorial was a really important component. So it was actually a component that was triggered within the application that guide the user through the whole process.
Yeah. Now, in the case of gaming, it's like it's needed, because in the case of gaming, you don't have any implementation partner that like, okay, you are at level 10 now, you can continue. That doesn't happen in gaming. It's like, you have to know how to navigate the environment in the game, how to recognize the objects, how to use your inventory and handle your inventory, etc. So you need to learn, basically. And that is what the tutorial, so it's calling in the gaming industry, is for. It's like guiding you across the game, and after you do the tutorial, you should know everything that you need to know to continue the game, usually.
Yeah, the other I think the thing that I recall a few years ago when gamification was hot. I mean, it's not hot anymore, but I recall there was a time where that was a thing. There was an element in games that I never saw be important in business, which is the fact that you have their NPCs. And many times these NPCs will guide you through the whole process. So they will tell you, oh, now you have to do this, and now you have to do that, and now you have a quest. They give you the very first quest. So you begin to get to learn the game. And then you had like you were being onboarded by levels of complexity by having different quests. And I think that perhaps for very complex systems, this is something that might be perhaps helpful to have something like quests. I don't know if you've seen that somewhere there. I know that, for instance, certain database software have already some pre-installed data that you can play with. Exactly. But so you have like a preset there from a fictitious company that you can use. But that is different from what you're talking about. It's just not to see everything empty. But that still doesn't do the onboarding, the hand holding and helping you to solve problems.
Well, in SaaS product, that's difficult to do, because usually when you buy a product, you don't use 100% of the feature. You only use 20% of the feature.
Then why do you implement the rest?
Comes with the software.
Why do you implement the rest?
No, usually, statistically speaking, every software that you're using 20% of the features at most.
But that's it. That's probably if you want to take some snippet and you want to put it in the at the beginning of the video of this podcast, I think that's the most important part. Because if people only use 20%, why are you implementing the rest?
Okay, now let me give you a little bit of context. So let's say you have a CRM, right? You have a CRM.
Okay. Yeah.
So you are in sales, and you are in charge of managing the data, like data quality and whatever. So that person managing data quality is using 20% of the software to manage data quality. The sales representative is using their 20% to schedule calls, do reports, put in orders. Then the other people that are also using the CRM, like procurement or whatever, they are using the other 20%. So it's not like everybody in the company use only 20%. It's like every user will use 20%.
So every function would use
exactly
a small array. But nevertheless, I mean, I can definitely think of software that most people that I know only. I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, that's why I think it's an interesting point, especially if you're building SaaS for people, because I think it's pretty accurate that people is not using a significant amount of the features that is being implemented. And then if you know that, especially if you're a startup, that you're building a software that you know that at the beginning is going to be used by one specific function within one organization, then perhaps you should really think twice if you want to implement all those wonderful features that cross your mind, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because usually the feature come from the product owners or the product managers or the business people, basically, what they think that the user needs, but actually what the user needs is completely different. So it's a fine line. You have to navigate between asking your end customer what they need, researching what they do on your own, and actually making your own conclusion. On the art again is like coming with a solution that fits somewhere in between what they tell you that they need and what they actually are doing and what you think that they need. So it's somewhere in between. Like I remember this anecdote from Henry Ford. He will say, if I ask my contemporaries what they need, they will say a better horse.
Yeah.
And if you exactly breed a better horse, never will build an automobile, for instance. So it's a fine line between what people tell you and what you think is needed.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing there is that actually what people want is to so the original question is probably people wanted to go from A to B faster.
Yeah.
And they would answer in terms of what they know. So they would say, well, I need a better horse. But I think if you, it's like if these 5 Ys, this 5W, way of asking things is like, if you ask, yeah, but why do you need a faster horse? Then at the end, you would get something like, well, because I want to get faster there. And then if you say, oh, you know what, well, we can drill a hole through the ground, and then you can, you know, you can just
Fly
slide through.
away.
Yeah. Then that will be also a solution, because at the end of the day, what they wanted to be is faster in the other place. But that brings me to something also interesting, because you were mentioning that people is using perhaps only 20% of the features, but as you mentioned before, you know, the designers and the product designers and you know, people who is thinking about the design of the product or the functionality is going to have, they assume that all these features are going to be used. So it might not be that sometimes you have the wrong navigation, or that features are obscured or hidden somehow, that the way to discover things within the application is not the right one.
So like that's a very big point, like navigation. So basically how you go from one part of the application to the other while you are trying to do your work, because never forget, like, people using SaaS software, unless there is direct to consumer software, you are trying to do your job with the software. So basically doing your job you're trying to do that. Usually what these kind of products do is they divide the navigation depending on the entities that the business manage. Again, CRM, you have your contacts, your leads, your deals, your orders, etc., etc. So it's the entity that the business manage, right? Another way that almost nobody does is like task-based. Like you have a task, like create a contact or call a lead or whatever, and build the navigation around that. But the easy way out is like you build it in with the entities that you are managing. And usually the names are standard in your industry. So if people go, it's like your phone. If you go to contacts, there's a list of people, right? It's the same thing. If you go to messages, there will be a list of messages, same with email. So that way you are managing the entities. It's not like you don't have a place in your phone that say conversation, and then in conversation you get like WhatsApp messages, emails. I think Android tried to do that, but that didn't fly too well, like conversation center or something like that. So you don't have that. So the easy way out is like you build your navigation around the entities that you manage in your business. And of course, behind that navigation, they are the features, like for the contacts, like create a contact, make a report, find a contact, whatever. And that is basically that way when you have to click from all the contacts, give me one group, and you have to click down and then click up again, or just make a shortcut to other thing. But some important part of the navigation that almost no software as a service implemented correctly is search. Well, that's a very important, because people are used to search, people are used to Google. So if you see a search bar, sorry, if you see a search bar in a product, you will expect that search bar will search through all the software. If you type a name, it will give you the contact, but also the order on the call, on everything. But it almost never worked like that, and that makes the user frustrating. So for me, take away from the navigation is like implemented in a way that is standard for your industry. If you are doing like the easy way out, like with industry terms, like do it like industry terms. Don't find new terms for your stuff, because they are not new. The industry is older than your software, so please use your standard terms. And actually implement a good search, and people will thank you and will use your software more.
So it's super interesting that what you're saying, because I don't know if you've seen these latest demos of, for instance, the Copilot in Excel. You know, Excel is one of these very complex tools where you have interfaces within interfaces. You have an editor for Power Query. You have an editor for macros. You have an editor for Visual Basic for applications. You can access to external data sources. You can transform tables. You can have tables and pivots, and you know, you have many things there. And now you have this Copilot that basically is shortcutting the whole navigation complexity and allowing you to find your path through the whole thing. Do you see in the future these copilots or these support agents will be something that will help people to be more productive, to navigate better all this complexity in navigation, and you know, and also the onboarding experience and everything? I think that comes a little bit together with the NPC story that we were talking before.
Yeah, definitely. That is very aligned with the NPC story. So in the future, when I foresee the short-term future,
Yeah.
you will have an assistant in every application when basically you will tell the assistant what you want to do. Like you will tell the assistant like, oh, I need to know my next call. What is that? They will fetch the data and present it to you. So you don't have to navigate there to see your list of calls, and then your next one should be the one on top. Like the assistant will understand what you need to do or what you're asking, will go into the system, fetch that data for you, and present it. So it's a challenge for us designers to how to implement or how to integrate an agent like that into the system. So it will be a layer on top, or it will be only the agent. But in that case, how do you manage the data behind that? So you cannot do that. Like you cannot do data entry that well with an agent. It's too slow.
Well,
Like
it's
a form is easier. A form is
I don't
easier
know.
at the end of the day. That
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm thinking a form that you have to fill 100 times a day.
I mean, I would because I saw the other day there is this. I don't know if you've seen this demo. There was this demo of Palantir. They have this new defense AI application, and they post this video online that they have this. Basically, it's like a command center where you are telling the AI, you know, find the hostile units, and then you ask what kind of resources I need to deploy to combat those units, and then you get these resources, and then you say, okay, upload this in the chain of command, so it sends you that to your boss, and then your boss is telling, yeah, you have to go, so you can, and basically you are entering information, so that in the past that would be something like, well, I'm entering data in this form, getting authorization for strike, and now you're just, you know, getting all that information from the agent, because the agent is able to recognize, well, what units are the hostile units, and what is going to be how I'm going to neutralize that unit. So I think that might help. I don't know. It's a wild guess, but I think they might help.
Yeah, they might help, but for the AI to know what type of units match with the other type of unit, first they have to have all the data, and all the data have to be entered in some form.
Somehow.
So at the end of the day, you will have like imagine this: if you are typing your address, so you are typing your address in an agent, the agent will tell you, okay, where you live, where's the street, where is the number. It's one question after the other. You have a form, you type street, tap, or click, number, postcode, whatever. So you know how to do that already, usually. So for certain type of task, the agent, it will be slower. Where the agent will shine is like making sense of what you need to do won't be constrained for the interface that we design. So if the agent have access to all the data, when you need like, okay, give me this obscure query that never thought about it, that you will need that. If we don't implement it in the UI, you have no idea how to get to that data. But with the AI, have access to all that data. You can ask for it, and basically it will do it without having the interface to navigate there. So that is the advantage that I see having this type of AI agents or NPCs along with you doing your work.
That's interesting. I found that pretty cool, because I think that might also lead to higher levels of customization, because I guess, once that you have, so to speak, your personal agent, that you build a relationship, and so the agent has, I don't know, it's like a session, in a normal web application. So now imagine the equivalent of a session in the agent world. Then this agent could customize things for you. And I think one of the interesting things in terms of productivity and experience is customization. It's like, sometimes I want to have my windows in the way that I want, and I want to have this thing, and I want to customize, and I want to use this theme, and I want to use this layout in the application. And that's not always possible. Sometimes I'm forced into a way of work, whereas other applications, they are way too customizable, so much so that I forgot how I show again this toolbar. So what about customization? What is good? How flexible do you have to be? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, basically that is, if you're selling software to businesses, to big businesses, like the first layer of customization they're gonna ask is like, how can we change the color to the color of the company? That's the first thing they will ask. So you have to have that unlocked. On there are levels of customization and globalization, if we are talking about that, like the way you present your dates, for instance, the way that you present your address varies from region to region. So when it's actually a problem. So once I was booking a trip, when I arrived to the hotel, I didn't have a reservation because the system where I booked it had another format on the date, and I switched the day number with the month number. So I have a reservation for 1 month after. So that can be pretty annoying sometimes. One thing that business ask, or business customers ask, is like, how can we customize it to fit our needs? Like, we want to only again, let's go back to the CRM example. I don't want to track like the company department. I just want to track the company, because for the department it doesn't matter. For my processes, I just want to track the department. And if the system have the department as a mandatory field in every contact, then you have a problem, because if you don't have it in your original data, or you are not doing nothing with it, or you cannot customize it, then you end up with a bunch of department not existent, department I don't care, department whatever the people type in that box, because it's mandatory, you have to type it anyway. So that is one part of customization. But the easy part that everybody will ask, or at least some big companies, is like, can we make it in our colors? That is the first thing that they will ask about customization.
That's
And
true.
then they will be like stuff like, if you have a dashboard, to actually customize it to the KPI that you are using. Like, the dashboard that you may use is not the same that the people in HR will use, or the people in sales will use, or the developer will use, using the same system. So people have different KPIs, and they want to see their KPIs in the dashboard. If you have that level of customization that we can customize the dashboard, that is a plus point for your software, definitely.
That's the whole customization business is interesting, because I think, I mean, I don't know if there's data on that, but I have the hunch that people would be more productive if you could have the environment in the way that you like. And I don't really know if that works at the company level. Like, if a company says, oh no, I know my people, and I know this is the way it's going to work best for them, I don't know if at that level that also is true, but I know that at least I have the strong intuition or the experience that if something is suited to me, or I could really, customize everything the way I like, chances are that I feel more comfortable using the software. You know, that there will be, yeah, and the software, the tool, whatever it is. I mean, we do it all the time with everything. You do it with your keyword, you do it with the configuration of everything, you do it with your clothes, you know, you customize your clothes. Essentially that's the primary form of customization that you see. So that's that. I think, therefore, I think that, and I think in SaaS is an often overlooked subject. So it's something that people don't think much about it, especially new companies, emerging companies. They don't think too much of customization. They, however, think a lot about speed. You know, many times they want to make things fluid, responsive. However, in many business scenarios, people also sometimes overlook this because they think, well, this is a business application. It doesn't have to be super fast. And sometimes you see, you know, sometimes it's kind of like a struggle, because say that you want to make a report and then that report, you know, takes forever. So that's not also good. So that's part of also like a terrible user experience. So what do you have on speed and, you know, customization in general? But, you know, speed, I think, is an important part of it.
Speed is crucial. So the one thing that I do most of the time when I'm reviewing a new product or working on with a client or whatever, is like measuring the speed of the task that the user need to complete and how fast it goes. So because basically on that is probably people don't know this, but if you have a process that take like 5 minutes, your employee want to start a new task parallel, waiting the 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. If we're gonna get a coffee, gonna talk with the colleagues, gonna go to smoke, go outside. But if we will wait these 15 minutes, so it's not like it will do an email. No, because in their head, they want to finish the task. And if they are in the middle of the task and they need data on the system, take like 5 minutes to pull up the data together to complete that is in the middle of the process, they will wait those 5 minutes. They will wait again another 5 minutes if that's the process that it is, till they completed the task to get a new one. So when people say, when managers say like people can multitask, no, that's not a thing. If you are doing one task, you want to finish it, and after that you start the other one. So in the meantime, if you are waiting for something, you can write a Slack message or write a simple email, but you usually won't want to start any productive task if you are one open, like if you are waiting for the system. If you're waiting for a colleague, well, that is an unknown when that colleague will get back to you. So for that, you can put that in the drawer and then pick it up when you get an answer. But if you're waiting for a system, you're gonna wait for the system till it's ready. So you are not doing anything else. So that is overlooked with a lot of designers, that they don't care about the performance, but actually that's part of the design. So if the application is snappy, the user will get this feeling that it's completing things faster. On even if your system is not that performant, there are things that you can do to mitigate that pain, like the pain of waiting. Like if you have a long process that the system have to do, is they not only putting a loading circle there, just put a loading bar which actually say which percentage you are. So the user will say, okay, it has been 2 minutes, and in the 50%, it will need 2 minutes more to complete. So I will get a coffee in 2 minutes, I will be back. And this will be ready, for instance. There are things that you can do to mitigate that. The other thing that you can do is like actually tell the user what you actually are doing. Like there is a very complex task, like you can say, oh, I'm fetching this data, I'm matching this data with this other thing, well, now I'm doing things. Like keep the user informed what the system is doing. It's not only like throwing a loading circle beach ball to the user. That doesn't help that much.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like the when you're installing software, you know, it's been a while that I installed software in my computer, but you know, installing software, usually you have it explains you. Some software, not all of them. Some of them, they have a progress bar and then you just don't know. And then sometimes they're in 99% and that 99% takes longer. That 1% takes longer than the previous 99%, which probably is true because the first one, which is copying files, and the second one is just installing, but I think it's kind of like a joke. But that's interesting. There is another way that I feel that applications, especially certain applications like financial applications or where you are ingesting data from other systems, that if you have if you have the possibility to show data in real time, that also gives people the sensation or the feeling that the application is very snappy. If you're seeing things really change as they happen, that really creates that sensation. And I think, especially in the realm of analytics or reporting, many of these applications, well, the update comes, it's a batch process and it runs every 8 hours or 10 hours or 24 hours. And seeing that data that is frozen in time, that there is no progress, that nothing happens, also gives that sensation, that experience of stagnation, if you will, that things are not moving forward. If you don't get refreshed data, from one day to the next, and then you see, oh, the things that didn't change. That I think that also contributes to that sensation that, yeah, things are not fast. But then there is also like the basic things, like everything freezes. Like when your application is trying to do something, they don't use, the most basic thing. They are not using an asynchronous call. It's just everything logs in, waiting for the things to update. And you would think that today, that's something that seldom happens. But it's amazing the amount of applications that actually, freeze while they are doing something. And then you think, oh my God, the whole thing broke.
Yeah. And even more frustrating is, like you say, you're creating and you're doing a task on the system, tell you, oh, you schedule a call with this client successfully. And then you go back to your list of calls and it's not there. Yeah. It takes like 1 minute and 3 refreshes to show up. So they are system like that out there. And it's really frustrating because after you finish on the system, say, yeah, you created it successfully. And then you go back and it's not there. Then your trust in that system goes away. So it's very frustrating because you don't know. So it's safe. It didn't save. I did something wrong. I did something right. So you put in a user in a very difficult situation in that.
And I think the difference, I mean, that this kind of experience happens seldom in B2C software because people have pretty low tolerance. If I'm using an application that is not consistent, like it brings me into an inconsistent state, I will quit that application if that happened twice. But in the business environment, I'm forced to use that. Yeah. So you see some people are struggling with that and thinking, oh, am I, I'm not smart enough trying to figure out how this works, or is it the software, or is it me? I have to deal with this stuff because I'm stuck with this, and it takes time until you escalate that this software really doesn't do what it has to do. Up to what extent is the software or is the employee that is complaining? So it's a different dynamic, and I think that's something that sometimes software developers get away with when they're doing SaaS. Like, they say like, well, anyways, people is forced to use this stuff. But I think that's a really bad excuse sometimes. And I get people, they could do better. It could do better.
They could do a lot better, but usually the people buying the software for the company are not the ones that are gonna be using it in the end. So that is one thing. They buy the software because the salespeople tell them a literal story, how their business will benefit for using that software, but they don't tell the story how it will be implemented on how their users will like it in the end. So there is an unknown. The decision makers do their decision based on that sales pitch would usually not listening to their end user. If the product is really bad, then you will get a lot of complaints in your company and you may want to take a look at it. Otherwise, people just they just get used to it and they say, okay, it's pretty bad, but it's my work, so
It's
I
the
have
way
to
it
do it.
is.
It's
That's
the
the
way it
way.
is what it is. So
This is the
they,
way.
yeah, this is the way exactly.
This is
But
the
just
way.
get along with it, and they learn to like to cope with the system. Or yeah, well, they are having a bad day every day if they have to deal with one of those things.
That's true. Not that it's too important when people is working. But one of the parts of making these experiences miserable is that sometimes they're inconsistent. That you see different things in different places, and it's still the same software, but you really don't know where you are, and
Yeah,
you're going back
yeah,
and forth, and
yeah,
it's really funny because if we are stacking all these problems that we've seen up to now, and you have the bad luck that you experience all this stuff, like inconsistent user interfaces, the stuff is slow, you cannot customize the whole thing, the navigation sucks, you cannot find the stuff. I mean, could be hell,
yeah.
and more
No, but
importantly, it hurts productivity. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. But you have, I'm pretty sure you are using, and everybody listening, they have right now one system in their mind when they say, "Oh, this system have that problem. This system have
Yeah,
that problem."
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and you were talking about inconsistency and the design. So
yeah,
basically, yeah. And if the bigger the product gets, the harder it is to keep consistency,
yeah,
because that product have a history. Have product have a history of people that have designed and built the product, or maybe the designer change or the design pattern change or something, and then you have a form or a dialogue in one place that have like, let's go for the easiest example. You have a dialogue and you have like, okay, cancel. When you have cancel to the right, on no, okay to the right, on cancel to the left. And then to arrive in another part of the application when it's the other way around. Like okay is to the left, and cancel is to the right. So that is inconsistency. So because your brain is trained to see differences. So if you see the pattern, then you know how it works. But as soon as you get a difference, you will know it right away, and that will irritate the user basically. And actually change the meaning of because the order, how the user reads and how the user scan the screen have a meaning. So if you put something to the left, have more meaning in Western cultures as if you put something to the right, depending on the visual style that you give to the application. And the other thing is like basic design principles. If you sometimes you arrive to one page and you have like 20 different fonts in a web page. So that is very, it takes a lot of bandwidth in your brain to process that. If you only have like two, in the case of consumer applications or brochure type, you have to convey information, like maximum two fonts, like one for the titles, one for the body text, etc. Maybe one different for the call to action, but then you have to be very careful how to do that. And usually in software as a service, you have like one font, but then you have different sizes. So you can arrive on a page where you have like three different kind of headers in different sizes. So that is also violating one design principle of hierarchy. So that things that appear bigger on the screen have more importance, and actually they're the first things that you're gonna see, and they will guide you through all the interface. So yeah, inconsistent design is also a problem that that a lot of people have. On the pitfall that some of the companies do is like they say, "Oh, we're gonna use like this library from Android material, and then we're gonna build our interface that way." Yeah, but you still need to pay attention where the OK button is, where the cancel button is, the navigation is right. that all the dialogues in your application behave the same, that all have the same title. If you use the same icon for the same, so you cannot you cannot use like a warning icon in green, for instance, in one place, and then the same warning icon in red in another place, because a warning icon, so you have a meaning. So, but all those problems I have seen it in real life, they're out there. So that is called inconsistent design.
Yeah, there is one example that I've seen, something that happens often, especially legacy software that it's been built incrementally over the years, and the thing might be 5, 10, 15 years old, and then you have sometimes different UI libraries being used to build the software. And so you see certain parts of the software that is being built with certain UI libraries, and then the modern parts have a more modern interface, and you realize that, well, when this thing was updated, it was not updated in a holistic way. It was not everything updated. It was just, it's a modular design, which from the engineering perspective is probably a good thing when you have a modular design. But that also leads to the fact that the UI, well, it's also modular, and then you have inconsistencies. This stuff looks like, wow, I'm looking at something that it was written in the 90s, and this other part looks like super modern and super up to date. So
Well,
that's something that I've seen often.
Yeah, well, there are two reasons. Like those kind of keeping the whole product in the same design language, it costs money, but it means not only the new stuff has to be in the same language, but also the old stuff. And that may be that the technologies that you use for the old stuff doesn't support the new design language because it's too advanced. You can get away with that. So there's a valid case for that. One is save money. And the other one is like if your personas are totally different. So the people who are using the old modules are always the same people who then don't get to see the new ones, and vice versa. So the people using the new models are always the same and they don't see the old ones. So you can get away with that. Like that is a business decision that you're going to take. But if your user have to change from A to B, from the old model to the new model, there's a break in between, and it feels like a different system. So it feels totally disconnected. When it's on top, you have like performance problem, that you do something in the old thing, and then it doesn't show it in the new one, then you will hate that system.
The experience that I've had with that is it feels archaic somehow, and it feels also like it's like when you're used to work in a modern user interface, and then you suddenly jump to a command line, or you've been using VS Code or whatever other IDE, and then suddenly you are using Vim,
or something,
or
Nano.
or Nano, and then it feels weird, and sometimes it's kind of cool because it's like, oh, this is like the old days and you need to know the stuff, but sometimes it feels strange.
Yeah, definitely will feel strange. I think we cover a lot for today. We can wrap it up and do a second part at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've covered a lot. I mean, we had some other stuff on the pipe for this episode, but it's we covered already a bunch of information. I think it makes sense to make a second episode about this, because user experience, I think, is super important, and people get it. I mean, especially in business, in SaaS, it would make a lot of sense that people give it a little bit more of love to the experience of the customers. Yeah, because again, this is what we were mentioning before. People is forced in a way to use this software because it's part of their, the toolkit that they use for their daily work. But still, when people is going to make a choice, I think productivity is an important factor, and productivity is part of productivity is the user experience that people have.
Yeah, if you buy a system that is hard to use, your employees will be less productive, because first they have to learn how to use it, or they're gonna take twice as long to do the same task in another system that maybe the user interface or the UX is better.
Yeah. Okay, so that was a wrap. I think you're going on a trip, so I think we're gonna have like a small break,
like
but
2-3 weeks break.
Yeah. So, but when you return, then we will probably continue with this subject, and then we just continue with the what we have in line. We have some really interesting stuff line up. So yeah, stay tuned, follow this thing, subscribe, like it, share it,
send it to your friends.
Send it to your friends. Share some love, and we talk to you next time. See you then. Bye.
See you. Bye-bye.